It's a consulting firm for publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies. We advise them on communication strategy. And we also do research on Bitcoin mining companies that are publicly traded under the banner of Miner Mag. You can go to the website and check out our data. That's free. Can we start with?
Hi, my name is Earl Mai, founder, CTO at Epic Blockchain. We do chip design, system design, firmware design, and anything mining related.
Hi everyone, my name is Chong with Foundry. So I think Foundry is most well known for our Bitcoin mining pool, but then with our mission of empowering a decentralized infrastructure, we are also a large self-miner ourselves, and then we aim to provide all kinds of products and services in the mining ecosystem, from Foundry X, our ASIC brokerage service, to logistics, to Foundry Academy, where we teach people about mining, help people become mining technicians.
Maxwell Niederluecke from Rebel Mining Company. We specialize in site development and full service hosting. Currently have operations in Texas and Missouri.
I'm Will Middleton with Advanced Crypto Services. We're a repair shop in Fort Worth, Texas. We got about 20 technicians, do high volume orders.
Cool, thank you guys. So the topic is halving and how to prepare for it, and what everyone is doing to be prepared for it. And we've seen how the hash rate is crossing all-time highs, and we keep reading this in the news every 2 or 3 weeks. There's another all-time high broken by the hash rate. Do you think that this will make the halving come sooner than later? Would like to hear point of view from the panelists.
So block times are block times, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Hash rate goes up, difficulty adjusts. I think sooner or later doesn't really make a difference at this point. We all know it's coming. And really the whole point of this panel is trying to figure out how people are preparing. You have some guys going after efficiency, some guys going after lower power, and then you have guys who are investing in new equipment, preparing for the next generation still. So there's a few ways that these guys are trying to attack the problem. No one really knows which way it's going to work out.
Yeah, I think on average we have seen hash rate climbing about 5 to 7% a month. Obviously, there are outliers. For example, like during the months of summer, hot weather in Texas, and with the 4CP going on there, I think we see hash rate actually drop slightly. But then it's not gonna be surprising to see all those bounce back right after the summer months. And then obviously there are constraints out there as well, like how fast can sites get developed, and then also how quickly can machines get manufactured. So I think if we expect the trend to keep going, about 5% average increase in hash rate, I think we can still expect the halving to be somewhere in April of next year.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what they say, I think we're all aware the halving's coming and the exact date's not as important. Right now there's kind of been a little plateau in the hash rate, and maybe some people think that there's not a lot of new miners going online, but really a lot of it is just curtailment in the summer. So a lot of miners are still deploying new gear. There's a lot of miners sitting in warehouses right now waiting to be deployed. So I think as we come out of summer, there's going to be a pretty sharp increase after this plateau. And yeah, like they said, probably April.
I think I just echo what everyone else says. The halving's not going to come that much sooner than we think at this point in time. Now, if you would ask me 3 years ago, right after the last halving, maybe there's a little bit more variance, but the network does a pretty good job of regulating itself.
So in this panel we have miner makers, we have mining equipment repair providers, and we have hosting providers, and we have pools, and basically everything else that there is in mining. We would like to hear how you've seen your client's business and your business changing in the light of upcoming halving, like strategies that they're adopting, the things that you think will work or wouldn't work, and things that you are doing at your end to be better prepared for halving.
So at Epic, we produce Bitcoin mining ASICs and rigs, and we've seen a slowdown in the progression of purchases. A lot of these miners kind of hunkering down, taking a wait-and-see approach to see how this halving is going to occur. So that business actually is slowing down for us. But on the other side, we sell custom firmware, and this is where these guys are trying to put firmware down to run their machines more efficiently. So that business has now accelerated. So we're flip-flopping between the two all the time.
Yeah, I think at Foundry, so at least for our own self-mining, I think what we always like to do is do some scenario planning. And then with halving just about 9 months out, so now with our scenario planning, we are definitely cutting into that halving. So just really planning what what Bitcoin price would do through that time, and then what hash rate would do through that time. And then I think what's really important is observing the low points, because yes, I think all of us here are super confident about the price of Bitcoin. We think it's gonna run, and then I think at Foundry we believe so as well. But there will be some time where things are gonna be tough, and then are we prepared and ready for that time? So if we are a miner at a hosting side, how does the contract look like? Are our incentives aligned with the hosting provider? For example, like the hosting rate could be 7 cents, but the energy production cost might be just 5 cents. So when break-even points become 6 cents, what's going to happen is your hosting provider is going to keep running the machines at a loss, so that they can still charge you at 7 cents, but that's uneconomical for everyone. So how do we maximize the pool? Like, so it's all about looking at the low point and then having those kind of arrangements with our hosting providers.
Yeah, so when I talk to miners who are looking to deploy equipment at a pretty large scale, everyone has their own strategy. Some people are, especially with newer machines, willing to pay a little bit higher of a price to get the best uptimes possible. They want to be as close to 100% as they can. Other groups are looking to drive the cost low on the power side. So as we're approaching the halving, what we try to do is just be as flexible as possible, to make it work with our customers' goals and what they think is the best strategy as we head in the halving. One way we do that is we allow our customers, our clients, to actually own the power agreements with the utilities. This gives them control from a hedging perspective. It allows them to set a strike price when energy goes above $80 a megawatt hour. They can shut down. They can capture revenue through demand response and curtailment. And really they're in full control. It also helps eliminate risk. If you're with a host who has a site with a higher power cost, and one of his larger clients can no longer pay the bill, that puts all the other customers at risk as well. So we try to eliminate risk as much as possible and just be as flexible as possible so groups can survive the halving.
What was the question?
The question is how your clients or you are preparing in light of the halving.
Okay. Yeah. So in order to prepare for the halving, I think our strategy is keep your powder dry as much as you can, make as much cash as you can between now and the halving, and assuming Bitcoin doesn't go on a big run before the halving, there's going to be a lot of blood in the streets. I think that's a good time to pounce and buy equipment. You come to us, buy equipment, need to get it repaired, we'll get it repaired for you. But I'm a miner as well. I have a 5 megawatt facility that's personal. We just look to buy into the bear markets and then ride the waves. So I would say keep your powder dry. Really go after it when everyone's really hurting.
That's a good tip for everyone. Buy low, sell high. Easier said than done. So Epic here, as Earl mentioned, also makes Bitcoin mining machines. So Earl, I'm wondering, as a Bitcoin miner maker, what do you try to do when halving is so close? Because people do not want to buy the next generation, which costs more when halving is so near and less than a year away. How do you deal with that?
So there's a lot of established miners in this space now, and those are the ones who've been through a halving before, and they're hunkering down, figuring out what is going to happen. They're looking at strategy and seeing what they can do different from last time to try to improve on that process. But this is crypto. There's always a new entrant in the market, and these guys are looking at the halving and see it as just a speed bump, right? They're going to go straight through this. They're still coming into the space. They're still buying equipment. The halving, to some people, is this vision of Bitcoin going up again. Everyone seems to tell me every halving, Bitcoin's going up again. And so for all the guys who are experienced, they're kind of hunkering down more. And the new entrants, there's capital coming in, and the machines are just flowing through.
Wow. I guess that's how you decide who's experienced or not.
it doesn't mean one's right or wrong. We have no clue what's going to happen.
Agreed.
And if I knew when to buy low and sell high, I wouldn't be working right now. I'd be doing something else, probably on a beach. But for now, we're hoping that Bitcoin's going to do another run soon.
Cool. Amen. On the equipment repair side, have you seen any change in the kind of models that are coming or the pace at which you are receiving these equipments? Or maybe even people who don't want to pay for old equipment anymore to be repaired?
Yes, so there's certainly ebbs and flows in the repair market. You know, when the market goes down, like let's say last November, December, we do see a lot of clients just kind of stick and hold and just try to get through, right? When we were at Bitcoin 15,000, 16,000, it was pretty dicey. So it's hard to blame people for not wanting to fix equipment at that point in time. I think a lot of people were acquiring used equipment at that point in time, though, from a lot of bankrupt entities and that sort of deal. You know, when we saw the price pick back up, we saw a flood of machines kind of come into the market and to be repaired. You know, people, you know, stuff that had been picked up through auctions and whatnot. But no, I mean, look, I mean, as far as like the new models go, I don't know. My personal opinion is just like, you know, look at what has been produced the most, which models have been produced the most, and I think that those are going to be your kind of safest long-term bets. I try not to be a guinea pig on new models as much as I possibly can, and really just run like tried and true, robust used equipment, right? Or used or like equipment of models that like everyone knows like kind of how they work and how they perform. That's interesting.
And then I guess just to comment on repair as well from a miner's perspective. So I think today, like when we think about whether should we repair a miner, we need to think about, okay, what's the price of getting a new machine, because now the miner can cost as much as 20 to 30% of maybe like a used miner. So is a capital better used at repairing the miners or getting a new miner? Because think about it this way, my repair cost doesn't really go up during the bull run, but miner cost does. So you don't really get a chance to buy back those miners at that low price in the future. So do you want to repair those or buy machines with that same amount of money?
No, that's an interesting point. Like we hear different strategies here. Some, like Willem just pointed out, that some prefer to buy my models that are more produced than the ones that are more efficient, and that works out for whatever business model applies to that. And some would argue against it, of course, because they would.
Yeah, well, I think it's just like the models that are produced in really, really high volume, like they're produced in really, really high volume for a couple of reasons. One is, you know, typically it's when Bitcoin is high, right, and that model's out, and so they just produce a lot. But two, I think they produce that because because it works, right? Because it works really well, and there's a lot of demand for that device in the market. But like from a purchasing side, I would say, you know, like those models that have a lot of production have a really strong secondary kind of support market. So you have OEMs like making power supplies, making control boards. You have a lot of people in the market supporting it. A lot of people writing aftermarket firmware, right? You know, those guys are not going to make that stuff for. They're not going to make that stuff for a miner that just doesn't have a whole lot of volume, right? It's going to be really hard for them to make sense of the economics that go into the development that then support that miner. So, you know, I'm personally all about underclocking just everything, make it last as long as possible, underclock everything, right, and make it as efficient as possible. Because at the end of the day, I don't know. I didn't jump on the overclocking bandwagon, so that wasn't my cup of tea. I kind of thought everyone was crazy, but.
So at Rebel, do you have clients who would want to underclock than overclock, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies, you know, based on the situation. You know, you look at the last bull market when S19s were making $1,000 a month, and obviously everyone was trying to get as much juice out of those as they could, and they didn't care, what it did to the actual hardware if it damaged it, because it was a quick payback and they're making the most money. I think in this
Because
market,
they had already broken even on those machines?
yeah, they're already breaking even, and just that margin that they're making with that extra 10, 20, or if you're doing immersion, even more percent hash rate is just worth that extra revenue. But I think coming into this halving, we're going to see a lot more people underclocking for efficiency. We saw that last time. Last halving, the S9s, you could put them in low power mode for 900 watts and get much better efficiencies. And I think at one point, 80% of the S9s in our facility were underclocked, just because you had to do it to survive. You weren't profitable. Miners were covering their power bills, and that was it, and they survived. And then once Bitcoin starts going up again, then you can think about it. Another benefit of underclocking, depending on climate, depending on what infrastructure you have. If you're in a super hot climate and you don't have infrastructure that can keep the miners cool, that you can underclock, keep higher up times. Machines aren't shutting off due to overheating. Yeah.
Oh, that's a very good point. As we get closer to the halving, it seems that there will be more demand to underclock these machines than overclock, and that's what it seems to have happened last time too with the S9s, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think we are definitely a big fan of underclocking, especially closing to the halving. Like, efficiency is key. And I think one of the bigger challenges we have seen so far is how do we make sure we have the people, process, and systems set up so that you can really execute on that strategy and then be nimble about it, right? Like, Bitcoin price might be at a price today, but it might jump up the next day or go down below a certain level the other day. So how do you really switch between the underclocking, normal mode, just be really nimble and flexible around that?
I guess that creates more opportunity for firmware providers like Epic.
Yeah, so what we're seeing in the industry is everyone's tackling this problem differently. Some of them are about operational efficiency. Why leave anything on the table? A machine is down, get it fixed, get it replaced. You can really stretch, what are the metrics they use? The amount of Bitcoin generated per exahash. And that's what we're seeing. And the public miners are ranked monthly, and this is something everyone's paying attention to. You can change your machine now that you bought. You can underclock it, but you also have a power contract you have to adhere to. So you have a balance there for some of those guys too. They can't just underclock and use less power. Some of them must use power or else pay for it still. And then you have guys who are on the other end of the spectrum who are just going to drop down as low as possible, hunker down, survival mode, see what happens. Maybe the halving goes up, the halving goes down, and then figure it out from there. But everyone's trying these different strategies. My preference is the operational one. You're a Bitcoin miner, mine Bitcoin. Be more efficient, do it better, right? You've bought the machine, you committed to it. A lot of these machines have ROI for them already, and you're going to help the network, mine.
Are there ways to underclock or overclock machines on a mass scale without doing it individually at the miner level?
So custom firmware came around since the early days when Canaan released their machines and you bought your own controller, right? Nowadays, there's a few popular firmwares out there, including Epic's, where a lot of the task of tuning your machine has been taken off the end user and has become an automated process. So nowadays, ambient temperature adjustments, power adjustments, voltage, frequency, all those things are controlled by the control board of the software itself, which makes tuning much easier. And this can be deployed at mass scale, which allows people to curtail when it's too hot outside or when ERCOT demands it, but also adjust for cold weather temperatures. Everyone complains about the heat, but when you're Canadian and it's cold, your power supplies don't start, right? So there are other things. Stock firmware has its limitations. So we really see a trend in the industry kind of moving away from stock firmware. We do see some help from the manufacturers who I think believed released efficient firmware in the last down cycle so that they could run their machines at a lower power state.
So we talked about how you can operate more efficiently or for the long term, given whatever realities your business has. But when it comes to financing, like what are the options available to different businesses, whether you're publicly traded or private? How can you capitalize on it in terms of preparing for the halving?
So my experience with this is brief since I sell equipment.
But I'm sure you also have to sometimes raise money for your next generation chip tape out.
Yeah, so what we typically do in the space, and ever since the inception, is we take money up front. That's what we've been doing. As for how we raise money in the future, when Bitcoin goes up is when you raise money. It's the best time. It's the obvious answer that you should be doing it, and you have to survive when it's down. We run a traditional semiconductor business, which kind of changes things a bit. We do a lot more planning. Obviously, I could take a lesson over here from strategy as well. But we don't see any different from a traditional company where we have our expenses to be paid. We plan for it. Bitcoin may go up or down, but we're still going to work.
Yeah, I think the lending landscape has been very interesting. So obviously, Foundry used to be a huge lender in the space up to 2021. So back then, during the low interest rate environment, we can see interest rate at about 20-25%. Whereas now, when the interest rate is so high, we are instead seeing like interest rates in the like 10-15%. So that's a really weird dynamic. But I think what we can attribute that to, one, new players entering the space. So back then, at least in the US, like Bitcoin mining wasn't a really big thing. Traditional financials weren't comfortable with it. I think a lot of them got very comfortable with it. So with the new entrance of capital in that space, I think that brought the interest rates down. And then the other thing is also using Bitcoin as collateral. Again, I think back then people were really uncomfortable with that, and these days people are getting used to that. So I think those two factors really brought the interest rate back down, even in this high interest rate environment.
Are companies still keeping Bitcoin as collateral in the current market conditions? I mean, institutional equipment lenders.
I think that there are institutional lenders out there that takes Bitcoin as collateral. Yep.
Yeah, I'd say on the financing side, last bull run, a lot of traditional banking folks got into the space and were interested. Seems even more so the past 30, 60 days, they're getting further and further away from it. The downturn scared them. They kind of settled back into it, but we're seeing a real gap there today. And then on the equipment lending side, a lot of groups were lending on miners that were being sold for $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. It's not sustainable to make that profitability that we experienced for a short time there for the long run. Typically, historically, we look in sort of this bear market or coming out of a bear market into the halving, ROIs on machines have kind of been 24, 36, maybe 48 months. When we're in a bull market and we see an 8-month ROI, yeah, it looks great, it looks safe, but it's not sustainable, and a lot of people got burned. So I think that's a big reason why there's not as many options out there today.
Interesting. Do you have any thoughts to share on financing? You think there are derivative products that miners can capitalize on to prepare better for the halving?
Yeah, I mean, I think there certainly are products out there, a few different options. What we really focus on and help our customers with is just hedging energy risks and really helping them through the energy strategy to keep their costs as low as possible. Miners, we're all competing with each other at the end of the day. When the halving comes and some folks are unprofitable, they're going to be the ones shutting off. The network's going to balance, and it's really the ones with the highest efficiencies and the lowest costs that are going to come out ahead and remain profitable long term. So we really try to focus on the energy side.
What kind of options are out there to hedge your energy risks?
So it varies by market, but we do a lot of projects in ERCOT. So we work with power marketing groups out there to buy blocks of power and really stabilize their costs long term.
For how long can you lock in these prices?
Typically, I mean, it's pretty flexible. The other day we were looking at one for a 32 megawatt site that was a 5-year hedge. But some prefer short term, and others just want to buy from the LMP So it's real-time power prices based on actual generation and demand. But like we saw last year, power prices run. Some folks, they either had to curtail heavily or, they're paying a much higher rate. So, and every client has a different strategy. Some, some need to be hedged to prevent risk and are really risk averse. It's a little more expensive. So others are really willing to take a little more risk to get a lower price.
Interesting. And so, William, you had some good thoughts on how this halving is going to be different from the previous ones. How is it going to be different, and why is that?
Well, I think at this point, I think that a lot of the smaller, let's see. I just think this halving's going to be more brutal, personally. Unless Bitcoin goes on a big run, which I sure hope it does before the halving, I just think that we're going to see a lot of people at like 7-cent power rates, 6-cent power rates getting squeezed really hard. The same thing happened in kind of August last year, August, September, July, August, September, that sort of area when natural gas prices just spiked and people with floating charges got, rocked. Even our operation, so we have like a floating fuel charge, right? We're in a regulated market, unlike Texas. Kudos to Texas. Texas is great. But we're in a regulated market, and we saw our fuel charge prices triple, and go do like a 4 standard deviation move in like 2 months, and that just rocked the whole market. I told people, funnily after that, I was just like, look, if someone could have told me that I could have just like short natural gas and I didn't have to build a mine and I didn't have to buy Bitcoin machines and I could basically play the same game, it would have been a lot easier and a lot more comfortable from my couch or from the beach than buying a bunch of machines. But it seems like we're all kind of short natural gas in this industry, or at least short kind of like average power prices. But yeah, look, I think this halving is going to be. It's going to be harder. I think that there's going to be, the thing that's different, and you might notice that like some of the really, really big miners are not present here at Mining Disrupt, right? And I think that's kind of one of the first years where I've seen that the really large players are actually not at this conference, right? And they're so big and they have so much scale. And I think that what we will see after the next halving is a significant amount of consolidation in the market. And so I think you just want to be prepared to make sure that you're not kind of, that you can survive, through this. And just make sure you can survive, right? Like keep your balance sheet strong, keep your powder dry. I tell people, so we actually operate like a small facility in the southeast, and we actually curtail like 20% of the year, right? So we only have 80% uptime. We get a really low power price.
Is that under some demand response contract?
No, it's not demand response. It's just a public rate. And it's not demand response at all. We just shut down same times every day. We shut down like for 7 hours a day, every day during the week. And so, a lot of people are like, well, they can't get their heads around that. And I just tell them, like, look, when the market booms, everyone's making money hand over fist, right? But you got to get there. Right? You got to survive. And so it's all about survival. And then when the market's hot, man, like, you're pulling in, a few $100,000 or a few $10 million a month or whatever the number is, right? Like, that's a lot of money. But, like, take that, make your balance sheet strong, make sure you can survive, right? It's all about survival.
Yeah, and I agree with Bill. I think one thing you have to remember as well, like, during the last halving, China is still a very big mining country, so I think the average rate across the mining ecosystem, mining network is definitely a lot lower. There were a lot more margins, so we didn't see. I mean, there were quite some pain, but I don't think that's going to be as much pain as we see this cycle. I think if Bitcoin price doesn't run, we can see as much as 20-25% drop in hash rate during halving.
So I hope this time around a lot of the miners are more prepared. This is another halving. It happens every 4 years or so. And from past experience, they should be learning. But I do believe a lot of them haven't learned, and it will be brutal, as you've said over there.
Yeah, I agree with these guys. I'll say one interesting thing about the last cycle and the last halving was, you look, that was I think May 2020. So you look 6 months before that, around December, and Bitcoin, there's a huge downtrend. I think Bitcoin got down to about 3,200. But at that time, S9s, depending on your power rate, was, break even was 6-7 cents. So previous bull run, a lot of people started new, smaller facilities at the time. 10-cent power. Oh, it seemed great. They could get online right away. So actually saw a lot of sites fail then before the halving. So when the actual halving came around, yeah, there was more failures. But people were prepared for it because they have already experienced it a little bit prior, 6 months prior to that. But yeah, we're bound to see people who rushed in last cycle. There's a big capacity crunch. So people found sites that had higher power prices. We're going to see more failures. It's inevitable. But the ones who have prepared and who are preparing today are going to come out, strong on the other side.
So we talked about how everyone can prepare better for the upcoming halving, learning from the previous ones. But there are new things that didn't exist during the previous ones. It includes new technological solutions that were not existent during the last halving, such as developments in immersion that didn't exist at scale at that time. There were not so many suppliers. There was only one, if any. There was the 3M liquid, and that was the only one. And then now we have so many liquid providers, and we have so many ancillary services providers just for immersion cooling alone. And we are not even talking about other technologies and techniques that exist now that were not there. The audience may want to hear from the experts here on what kind of technologies exist now that can easier the pain of the upcoming halving.
Yeah, well, we touched on it earlier. For the firmware side, being able to squeeze the most efficiency out of the miners as possible, because at the end of the day, most efficient miners survive. Immersion's interesting. I don't think it makes as much sense near the halving and around the halving, but obviously you can build out systems now and prepare for the next bull run. But just the additional capital required. You save a little bit on the power consumption, removing fans, can overclock a bit more, but really overclocking, I think, only makes sense in a bull market. And putting up all that additional capital up front might not be the best strategy right now as we approach the halving and people are kind of hunkering down to try to survive.
So I run an air mine and have also not been a huge fan of the immersion trend. But I will say that, as it comes to like being able to take some of that heat and repurpose it, right, and maybe put it into a greenhouse, like a lot of people have tried to do, or heat something else, or do some sort of application where you can maybe heat a building. Like if that actually provides you enough of a revenue stream to get back the extra capex that you're going to have to put into that immersion system, I can see some of that making sense. You can certainly get better efficiencies at a higher total terahash, top line terahash level, or terahash rate with immersion. But again, like it is extremely capex intensive, and so. But I don't know. I'm kind of a lot of people really like the immersion. I have not gone in head first into that pool yet. But it's certainly. I will say this: if your immersion system works and works really well and has been proven to work, then that machine can last a really long time in that fluid. I will say though, if you don't know or it hasn't been proven to work long term, immersion systems, when they go bad, the whole effing fleet goes bad very quickly. Whereas air mining, you can have like a hotspot and a machine dies and you're like, okay, that machine died, maybe I have some time to go correct the problem before everything else dies. When immersion, like, when you have a problem, the whole thing's done, so.
We've heard of cases like that, especially with water involved, immersion cooling or liquid cooling where water is involved.
Yeah, so to touch on both points over here, custom firmware allows you to just underclock, run more efficient. And that's what most of the guys are trying to do right now, be more efficient. And how this whole conversation on immersion or air, I have no preference. But from a technical standpoint, as we go down the technology nodes, getting to these 7 nanometer, 3 nanometer Bitcoin mining machines, we have a problem about leakage current, and that's directly correlated to how you can cool it. And immersion is doing a better job right now for a lot of people when you're trying to cool these machines, and that's where you're seeing the squeeze of a little bit of efficiency coming out.
What did you say again?
Leakage current, right? So as we make semiconductors, chips, smaller and smaller and smaller, physics starts to play, and we end up having leakage of electrons from one side to the other, which is leakage current, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As it leaks, it causes more heat. As heat rises, we leak more, and that's what you see in these semiconductors these days. You'll see now that the latest mining machines need to be very balanced and cooled properly. We're going from a time where we put a heatsink on and blew air through the machines, and it worked wonderfully, to each chip now has to be monitored and balanced itself.
Do chips with lower process nodes have a higher tendency to leak currents?
Yeah, it's just straight physics at that point. The leakage comes when you make things smaller and smaller and closer together. So it's a very common thing in the industry. It's well known. But what we're seeing now is chips need to be cooled better. And immersion is allowing miners to do that in a very elegant way. Do I have a preference over air over immersion? No, but when it comes down to it, if you can keep these things cool, they're efficient, and it also extends their life. Semiconductors rated to typically 125 degrees Celsius. That's when things start to break. You run them at a lower temperature, they last longer.
Yeah, so I think walking around this exhibition, I think the immersion technology, at least in the Bitcoin mining space, has definitely come a long way. As a strategy guy that likes to just look at things on Excel, I think I'll share some thoughts on how I think about in terms of economics. So if you think about what immersion really does, it lets you bring more out of your machine. So but immersion system, just like repair cost, is uncorrelated to Bitcoin price. Immersion systems usually doesn't go up as much just because it's a bull run, but machine price does. So think about, do you need to make more out of your machine when machine prices are low versus when machine prices are high? So I think that's just one consideration there.
That's interesting. I think the whole panel is in agreement here that immersion does extend the life of the machines, but it comes at a huge cost. And whether you want to do it close to the halving is maybe not a good decision.
Yeah, and like if you look at a miner last bull run, at the peak, I think people were paying around 10,000. You can squeeze 40-50% of more hash rate out of that, increase your revenue. That's $4,000 or $5,000 of value right there. Looking at the machine costs, you can buy 30-40% less machines and get the same hash rate at the end of the day. Where you compare that today, and it's a couple $100s of value per machine.
I got to comment on this. So, if someone, here's one of my problems is like with immersion, the form factor of these machines are always changing, and it's kind of at the whim of the manufacturer how that form factor changes. So if someone were to tell me, hey, you can buy this immersion system, and I guarantee you that the next 5 generations of machines are all going to be able to fit in that same tank, then yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. But it's really hard for me to make sense of like buying a tank that is fit to the particular form factor of the current generation of machines, and then have the manufacturers just be like, we decided to change our minds. right? Like, and all your capex is gone, right? And you can't change at that point. So, one of the things I'd like to hear from the Epic guys is like, you know, let's put the form factor a question aside for a second. Like, how efficient do you think these machines can get in, 4 to 6 years? Like, what is the joules per terahash going to look like in immersion?
So to comment on this, consumer electronics is the industry I came from. We used to sell product. We designed it. We made it. We charged a margin for it, and then people bought it. I was never a fan of Bitcoin going up. The machine price should go up. I didn't do any more work. But when the Bitcoin goes down, I don't expect you to ask for a discount either because I still did the same amount of work. So it kind of goes both ways. Like, I remember the days where a machine cost $10,000 and it was a wonderful business. But when Bitcoin went down, things go south. So there's a give and take there. If you promise to buy machines from me at this price with my margin, I'll keep the price steady, but you have to continue to buy. And that's the tricky part. People buy in these bursts, and it's kind of like the FOMO effect. Why did the price reach 10,000? Because we all wanted to buy.
Right, so a lot of the larger guys now are doing strategy, forecasting, planning in Excel, and it's wonderful because they know power's coming online, machines need to be bought, delivered.
And now we can have a better relationship when we sell product to them because I know how much machines are being built. I no longer have to inventory anything for these spot Bitcoin bumps. And then the next day everyone wants to buy, and then the day after everyone stops calling me. So back to this whole immersion and the efficiency of the chips, we're reaching a point where I don't think from a semiconductor design point of view, we're going to squeeze out much more from these chips. Yes, the foundries are going to make new nodes. Our cell phones are going to be more efficient. Bitcoin mining is going to be more efficient. But now we have to look at all the other aspects of mining where inefficiencies have been going on all along. Uptime is one of those things. Your PPA contract, your power contract, a lot of people have power at 7, 6, 5 cents, which was good enough once, and now that has to change again, right?
And then immersion, lengthen the lifespan of your machine. The whole concept of ROI, 8 months, 12, 14, 16, never had anything to do with our pricing. Our pricing is still based on
this is how much it cost me to make it, this is my margin, and that's what I'm looking for. But if you're looking to kind of mine in the future, I think everything has to be taken into account, not just the chip anymore or the joules per terahash that everyone's battling to get to the bottom of. There's so much left on the table from dev fees, pool fees, that we've kind of all accepted in our mining journeys, and we just pay them. I pay a pool fee, not to you. I pay a dev fee before in the past to a firmware manufacturer, and those are the things where we need to cut those inefficiencies out and find a better way to do it and still make money.
That was a good summary, Earl. Thanks. And there's another, like we've been talking about various strategies, various techniques, various technologies that can be adopted by miners to prepare better for the halving. But everyone has their own views on what the halving will bring. And that's something we would like to hear, like from each panelist. What do you think will happen around the halving, after halving, before halving? What will be the big ripple that will cause in the industry, in your opinion? Beginning with Earl.
I honestly have no clue what's going to happen. I'm hoping Bitcoin's going for a run. If it doesn't, I still hope that mining can continue with these people who are paying high electricity prices. It's one thing to shut down altogether and kind of liquidate, sell your equipment, or hold on for another month hoping Bitcoin will recover or something else will change. But I strongly believe this halving, we're much better prepared than last time. I forgot about China not being involved in this time in the mining operations, and our electricity costs are actually going to be higher on average this time around. So it will affect more people. But technology has gotten better. We can underclock our machines and go into survival mode. And I think that's the best way to go through this halving. I, as a miner, am going to hold out as long as I can and run my machines.
Yeah, I think like Earl said, have no idea what things are gonna do exactly, and definitely not financial advice. But I think I think the goal here is to prepare for the worst, right? But then now you ask, like, what's the worst? Like if I really want to prepare for the absolute worst, I think everyone should just pack up and go home. All right, so so maybe like think about everyone has different risk appetite. So think about like what's your risk appetite? Like how bad do you want to prepare for? And then again, like, there's always two elements, two numbers to this. Right? One is Bitcoin, like mining economics is Bitcoin price and also hash rate. Again, I think Bitcoin price is a lot harder to kind of predict or forecast than hash rate. I think hash rate is a lot more manageable, and I think I kind of talked on this panel earlier, which I don't think like if Bitcoin price stays here and nothing goes too crazy, I think we can see about hash rate drop 20-25% again. But that's assuming like we have 9 months out from halving, assuming hash rate keeps climbing till then. But then again, I think if anyone's interested in talking, like just brainstorming, talking through like what we think the hash rate is gonna do, feel free to find me offline down the switch. I think that's why Foundry keeps me employed. So I think I better don't share it here publicly on the stage.
That's interesting. Like a hash rate can only be as strong as the weakest miners can be, and some could argue that everything's going to be fine because the network will just adapt like it always has.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this halving, I hear it a lot that people look at the previous cycles and everyone thinks Bitcoin's going to go on a run, and I think we're all bullish and hopeful for that. But right now, really just need to be preparing for the worst. And as we get closer to the halving, leading up to it in the months leading up, and coming out of the halving, if the price doesn't go on that run, I think we're going to see a lot of opportunities for miners with capital to really expand and grow. Purchase used equipment at steep discounts. One interesting strategy that was talking with a group, and their goal is to wait until halving, buy miners cheaply, and basically mine for no profit if that's what it comes down to, and wait for the next bull run where all of a sudden those miners that they bought for $100 are selling for $1,000 and flip the miners at the peak. So they're not only capturing the Bitcoin mining revenue and basically dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin through mining, but then they're capturing the spread on the equipment and the appreciation when Bitcoin rises. Like we saw, last halving with S9s, round halving you could buy them for $20, and retail miners were paying $1,000 in the bull run. So that's quite a good return on that investment.
So at the halving, again, I echo what these guys says. I hope that Bitcoin goes on a run. But what I think is going to happen is that, this market is made up of like two types of people. Everyone kind of came from like a hacker hobbyist, and then we all kind of started growing up and building businesses around the industry. But I think there's kind of two types of people now. There's the degenerate gamblers, and then there's the seasoned professionals, right?
You think the former still exist after what we discussed about how this halving is different?
I think there are still degenerate gamblers in this space. There will always be degenerate gamblers in this space, always. But I think the ratio of seasoned entrepreneurs and degenerate gamblers is about to flip, right? Or certainly continue more in the trend of a lot more seasoned entrepreneurs and seasoned business professionals getting into the space. And when the halving comes, I think that you're going to see a whole lot less of the degenerate gamblers in the space. And they might come back with the next Bitcoin bull run, but I think that we're going to see a lot less of that in the space going forward.
So we got some interesting viewpoints on what's going to happen around halving. And there's another point that William touched while we were discussing how to prepare for the halving. And that was using the heat emitted by the machines to maybe power a greenhouse gas or something else. Are there use cases that you in the panel, any of you or all of you have heard of the waste heat being reused or recycled in any way?
So there's been a lot of talk in the industry on how to use this heat that Bitcoin mining generates. For from greenhouses, swimming pools at home, heating your house, even heating fish farms in the West Coast. And it all sounds like a good idea, but as a miner, the most difficult part for me is investing more capital into these things. And that's where we have to kind of find a balance. I do know of some companies that are trying to integrate Bitcoin mining into infrastructure, especially water heating for consumption in cities and towns. But I'm not someone who knows heat well. I know how to mine well. And if you ask me to deploy more capital into mining or into making this reuse philosophy a dream come true, I would put more money into mining. And I'm really waiting for the whole industry to mature. And there are companies that are going to come on board soon that will kind of be that piece of the puzzle and solve the whole thing. So as a miner, I don't think I'll be doing it, but I wouldn't mind working with someone who's going to take this hot air that I'm ejecting out and use it in some beneficial way. And I think that's a different space, not in the mining space, but it's something that's important.
And if you do the latter, which is reuse, it could also open you up to potential ESG investors. So it also brings in extra capital that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, and we're seeing that. There's a few startups that are doing water blocks, especially to reuse the heat generated by heating water, but the cost is quite high. And then the problem with being a manufacturer of equipment is I'm selling a machine today, and I'm going to be knocking on your door next year with a new machine saying this one's better. For this technology to really mature, you have to invest in the machine for a long period of time. You're not going to go in there and swap out the machine every year because I sold you a new one. So the whole economics and costs kind of don't work out well. So the way I see this working is the miners produce the heat, and then another company will come in and take advantage of that, and they will kind of incur that cost to make it happen. Not ask the miner to pay extra or a premium on this machine to have a water block just for that purpose. Yes, there's an opportunity to make money, but I believe buying another miner probably is the better idea.
Gotcha.
Not an expert in this, but I'll share some of my thoughts here. So I think,
Or use cases.
yeah, I think two ways I think this can work is, I think one, you go really, really big. So we're talking like district heating. So that may work. Because I think some of the use cases that Earl mentioned, I think swimming pool, greenhouse, gas, I think like greenhouse. So how many miners do you really need to heat up those? Maybe like 5 miners, 10 miners, 20 miners. Like how many industrial scale miners out there are really going to be interested in that? So you do really have to go really big, like district heating, to make it worth anyone's time. Or you go to the retail side where your goal is to put one miner in everyone's home. But then that requires a very different skill set, like marketing play, your production, your manufacturing. So again, that's very different from what most miners are used to. So I think that's why we haven't seen really a huge adoption yet.
I guess the regulators would need to be in on it for such a project.
You mean for the big one or the?
Yeah, for a district level or city level project.
Yeah, I think we have seen some traction. I think at least I've seen the news in Canada, like one of the cities started adopting this as one of for their district heating. But then again, I think the other thing to keep in note is not all cities are using district heating. So you do have to find certain places that use district heating. I think that's a lot more common in the Europe than in the US.
I heard that in Xinjiang, the Chinese government was doing this pilot in a city, and Mr. Gao is here from One Stop Mining, and he was building it for the government. Back then, this was before they banned mining and everything fell apart. But yeah, he might be someone you want to talk to about this city-wide project that the Chinese government was undertaking.
Yeah, so I'm from Minneapolis, and last year I met a guy, I think goes by Coin Heated on Twitter. But I saw a video he posted where it was negative 20 degrees in Minnesota, middle of winter. He had an immersion set up, and he was heating his pool to 120 degrees. Went and had some lunch with him one day, and he was actually going around apartment buildings, office buildings, and setting up small immersion setups to heat the water there. So I mean, that's interesting. But there's the greenhouse application, but my question is, does it scale? I think we've seen it work at small scale, but how can you scale that into 100, 200 plus megawatts? As the industry progresses, maybe we'll see that, but I'm not an expert in this, so that's just my only big question is how do we scale it?
There's also a company called Green Tech. They have a booth just right here, and they've got this facility running in Europe where they use the heat from the mining to heat water, which goes through these cold loops in a greenhouse where they grow marijuana, and it's helping them heat because they need to heat it in the greenhouse to dry the leaves before they process it. They need to dry the leaves.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great idea, and I think it would be great if we could do it at scale. It's hard to do it at scale. Personally, I'm more into ice baths, so if I could find a miner to cool my ice bath, I'd be all about that.
Cool. So before we end this panel, would like to know how do you think that how did you get into the space in the first place? Like, what got you into crypto?
So I had the luxury of founding a company just before the last winter, not the current winter. This was in late 2017, 2016, 2017. I come from a traditional semiconductor design background, working on things like the PlayStation and graphics cards. And I had a friend come up to me and say, let's start a company. And I asked him what for, and he said, it's Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin what? Mining. You make the chips, and he'll take care of the rest. That was a wild ride that started years ago, and we're friends to this day. He's moved on to other projects, and he's kind of left me behind. So I'm still here doing this, and it's what I love. The running joke I have is coming to Mining Disrupt every year, seeing familiar faces. There are companies that come and go, but there are quite a few that are here every year. Every year I go over to DMG, have a quick chat with Steve over there. He's always there, smiling, and we reminisce of who's here now, who's going to be here next year.
The people on the panel will be here next year.
Yeah, so for me, I like to think of myself as someone who's intellectually curious. So during the price run-up in 2021 and all the hype going around, I figured I got to learn what this is about. So I actually took an online course, learned about blockchain, Bitcoin, Web3, everything. So I think what really got me interested is I found out that it wasn't just about the tech, it was about like monetary policy, economics, consensus mechanism. It was kind of everything under the sun. So that got me interested, got down a rabbit hole. Not a great time to join, but I'm glad I'm here.
So earlier, Will mentioned degenerate gamblers. Back in high school, I liked to play online poker. And freshman year of college, the U.S. basically banned online poker. So I had a few $1,000 in full tilt, which was for a broke college kid a lot of money. And a year or two later, they said, "All right, we found a way to get your money out." It was in Bitcoin. So took me about a week to figure out how to sell it and get my cash, and like I think at that time it went down 5 to 10%, and I'm like, this is stupid, and I kind of lost interest, and it wasn't really until about 2016 where Bitcoin was coming up more and more, and was able to actually look into it and do research, and at that time I was working a job that I wasn't thrilled with, and so doing networking and telling people I'm into Bitcoin, and happened to, run into a guy whose friend was opening a Bitcoin mine. So I went and had lunch and basically just asked him for a job, and it's been a great 5 years, no regrets, and it's a great industry to work in.
You were at Compute North before, so you've been in the space a while. And
Correct.
So I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013. I was actually working for a bank at the time and had done like a presentation for my department. I think I bought it at 600 or something like that and sold it for 800, and then I forgot about it for like another till like 2017. Just didn't even cross my mind. And then I'd gotten out of a data science master's degree, and I had gotten pretty comfortable operating NVIDIA GPUs in that program. And I think I just stumbled upon some forum that was like, yeah, you can plug these things in, you can mine some Ethereum, make a little money, right? And I was like, I've seen this. I saw this happen with Bitcoin back in the day, right? And so like I just started buying as many GPUs as I could, and then had a little successful home operation, raised some money, top of 2018, and that went bankrupt, and that was hard, but it forced me to get. Our power cost was at 7 cents. It was brutal, and it was a couple years of my life with no pay. I lost as well, lost big on that one, but it forced me to get like our power cost under control, and so that's what we went after, and we were able to basically cut that in half, and so we are able to survive now. One of the things that I focus on in this space is I look at kind of like like how much do equipment prices move in comparison to Bitcoin moves, and so what we try to do at our operation is just like get the lowest possible power price you can, buy equipment at the lowest possible price when no one else wants to buy anything, and then ride the wave, right? So when Bitcoin goes up by 3x or 2x, you'll see equipment values go up by 4x or 6x, right? And then at that point, you have this machine that gets payback really quick, and then you can decide at that point, when do you want to sell, stack cash, prepare for the next bear run, or bear market, and then kind of do it all over again. So you play the kind of contrarian wave as everyone else. I think that's. I'm a contrarian about everything, but I mean, I think you play that contrarian wave and you'll do okay.
Cool. Thanks to everyone for coming here today. And that's Will from ACS, that's Max from Rebel Mining, Charles from Foundry, and Earl from Epic, and yours truly, Nishant from the Miner Mag. Have a good one. Thank you, everyone.